Guys, I hope everyone is doing well today. So myself a little bit bigger here, maybe. Let's see if that works. Hey guys, hope everyone is doing well today. So in this video, I wanted to do another response video, this time to Scott Pratt, smpratte, $1,000 evolutions boxes video. And he titled it $1,000 evolutions boxes, why it makes sense. And I've been I really enjoy doing my first response video. I think I'm going to do some more of these. Other people seem to enjoy them too. I do want to preface before I jump into this video to say that a couple things about my opinions about Scott, about smpratte generally. So personally, I don't think it's too strong of a word to say, I think that I am in debt in a lot of ways to smpratte, to Scott Pratt, for creating his YouTube channel, for creating his Patreon. A lot of the stuff that he has done on YouTube in this Pokemon space, I have been inspired by and modeled after, and modeled some of my content and what I'm doing off of what he did. And not only that, but he really taught me a lot. His channel taught me a lot. E4, which is a broad community, much bigger than just Scott, although he was definitely a big person from the beginning in that community, and did a lot to, I think, attract more people to that community. But I owe a lot to that community, to him personally, and I want to preface that because as we're going to go into this video, I'm going to probably be disagreeing maybe here and there with some of Scott's ideas and some of Scott's points. And I have had the experience before when I've disagreed with Scott, that there have been some people who can't seem to handle when people disagree with him, which is not Scott's fault. But, I think it's really good. And I really want to promote debate, conversations in a respectful way. And just because you disagree with me or you disagree with Scott doesn't mean that you can't learn things from both of us and that both of us don't have useful and interesting things to share. I think as a Pokemon community, as we become more mature, hopefully we can handle discussions and content like this without feeling some sort of need to take some side. And I'm sure I have some fanatics who who watch my channel and think that I'm never wrong and can't be wrong, and are making the same issue as some of these guys from Scott's channel or Scott's world who have come after me in the past. So I really wanted to start with that. I also think it's important to say that Scott and I probably agree on 90%, throwing out kind of a random number there, but we easily could agree on probably 90% of this hobby. I think we see things very similarly. We go after a lot of the same cards, the same sets, the same types of items, and I think we enjoy and chase very similar things. So although we might disagree, and we're probably going to highlight some ways that we might think differently about markets in this video, potentially, that does not, don't take that as a we disagree on everything type of thing. Okay. And hopefully I won't always have to preface videos with this type of thing. And hopefully it will go without saying that I do think it's important to put everyone in the right state of mind when you watch something like this, which is enjoy the back and forth, enjoy different points of view, rather than feeling some need to win some debate or pick some sort of side. Okay. So let's get started here.
Hey everyone, this is smpratte, and with the 20th anniversary approaching, I thought it'd be a good idea to talk about Evolutions and the 20th anniversary. Evolutions booster boxes are flirting with about $1,000 right now. For some people that makes sense, for others it doesn't make sense. So
I want to pause it right there and just mention that when he made this video, this was in, I believe, I want to say it was February. It it was, might have been January, February. So it's just over a year ago, like a year and a month or so ago. So quite some time ago. It's quite an old video. And at that time, this was around the time that Evolution sort of first hit that $1,000 price point. So I just want to, because I am taking a video that was made a while ago, just so everyone understands the context, the time context that Scott's talking in.
Do here is talk about the history, do a little story time, what it was like 5 years ago. Also throw a ton of data at you, talk about the EV and what the contents of the box are worth versus the price of the actual box. We're just gonna have fun talking about Evolution's Day and the 20th anniversary because it's a very fun, enjoyable, reoccurring topic. So going back about 5 years, 2016, when I started making videos and they were slightly more cringy than they are today, that was a different landscape. You didn't have the blue check mark YouTubers. You really didn't even have people talking to the camera. Like I was one of the first people to do that because I was always frustrated doing things with my hands in front of the camera. I just wanted to talk about the hobby and the market. That was in its infancy back then. You didn't even have like these big stores like DA Card World, all these big players that are now a staple, even PWCC. They weren't messing with Pokemon on the regular like they do today. So therefore, when Evolutions dropped, it was an explosion. This was a set that single-handedly brought people back in, made people excited. Like on E4, you had like a mega thread that was like 50 pages long. It was by far the closest thing I felt to that original 90s era.
So I think that from my personal perspective, the thing that most brought people back was Pokemon Go. And Evolutions happened to be a really nice add-on to that period where not only are people rediscovering Pokemon for the first time with Pokemon Go, but they have this original reprint base set, which I do think really helped not encourage necessarily, but really cement maybe people's interest. And it made it easier to maybe access Modern for the first time. So I definitely don't disagree with Scott that Evolutions was a big hit for a lot of people. And I'm sure that on E4, there were a number of threads and people talking about it. I do think though that it wasn't really Evolutions probably that brought people back to Pokemon, probably more so Pokemon Go, and then Evolutions kind of helped capture and keep that attention possibly. Although I could be wrong about that. It's a hard thing to really pin down.
And redesign their site with all this retro nostalgia. Like it was just 100% 11 out of 10 execution. It was a fantastic job. So there's no doubt in my mind or in anyone's mind who experienced that, especially, that Evolutions is a good set. There's a reason why there's so much of it out there, because there's so much demand. Another very valuable data.
So him saying that there's no doubt about it that it's a good set or that people like it, that feels a little bit of a hard sell or untrue. I know when I first opened Evolutions, I did not like it. And I cannot be the only person in the world who opened Evolutions and then only opened one box. And then I way preferred every single set from that era. And I way preferred every single set in Sun and Moon, including Crimson Invasion, Steam Siege, a lot of these sets that are not, that are talked down on. And that's because I just didn't really like the reprinted arts. It wasn't exciting for me to pull that Charizard. Now, part of it, and this is something I've argued a lot, was that because at that time, the cards didn't really have any value. So unlike today, when you particularly when this video was made, and we're going to go a little bit more into the numbers of what things were selling for at this time, but a PSA 9 Charizard around this time, Evolutions Hollow sold for something like $1,000, $1,200, I think was the very, very highest one, but generally speaking, about $1,000. Okay. So the idea that you could pretty easily pull $1,000 card. This is, it's not that difficult to pull a regular Hollow Evolutions Charizard. I think made the set a lot more exciting for people this time around, because the reality is it's fun to pull cards that are very expensive. That's just the reality. Whereas that didn't really exist back then. So I do think that not only do I particularly not like reprinted cards, not only do I didn't really like the layout that much or the style of it, but also base set back then was super, super affordable. And so I could get a complete PSA 9 mint base set for like $400. $450, I think I paid for my first one. Okay. So I could buy a box of evolutions for $100 or $80 because they were fire selling them, for a long time, even less. Or I could buy a PSA or a completely graded unlimited base set PSA 9 set for 450-ish bucks, right? So that's part of why I think this tale that's kind of told that like everyone loved evolutions and wanted to hunt and collect evolutions and it was amazing. Part of the reason why I didn't have that, again, to reiterate it, is just that the value wasn't there. The value wasn't there in the cards. Whereas this time around, when people started going back to it, people could pull $1,000 card, pull many, many $100 cards. And as Scott's going to talk about, the expected value became very high. And thus, I think it added a lot more excitement and enjoyment for people who are opening it now than back then. Now, all that being said, you're still going to find a lot of people, who were back in the hobby then, like me, who were opening this set, who did really enjoy the set, who were really excited about it, and who did complete binder sets of it. I do think that it got, and we'll get more into this in this video, I think that the vast, vast majority of people, if not everyone, really didn't like this set after a while because there was so much out there and we all sort of got our fix with it and kind of moved on. But we'll get into that a little bit more. Again, these are very hard things to talk about because who Scott might have been talking to might have been different than who I was talking to. And so to make generalizations, I think about, how popular, exactly what reason someone got back into the hobby is a little bit tough to do. So I guess I'm showing you a little bit of a personal, subjective sort of a different experience that I had with this.
Right. Is back in 2016, I remember I made my order with my distributor for like 10 cases or something like that. And they texted me, hey, we can only get like 6 right now. We can get you the rest of them in like a month because we're completely allocated. That was unheard of. It wasn't 2021 now, like with all the stonks and the bots and everyone just blowing up Pokemon Center every week. It wasn't like that back then. So for that to happen back then, 2016, unprecedented. What does that tell you? This set has a lot of demand, and I think that goes without saying for most people. So
and I will say to Scott's point there, particularly in the beginning, the most expensive card, or the card that really had a lot of value, is actually the Mega Charizard Full Art card, if my memory serves me at the top of my head. And that card for a little bit was selling for like $200, which at the time was massive. Again, $450. I could have bought a complete PSA 9 base set. So there certainly was for a period there a lot of excitement. Then so many of that card was graded in a PSA 10 because it was so easy to grade over time that card very quickly kind of collapsed down to a $50 value, which gets into other points that I try and make often on this channel, right? That not only that tastes change. So in the beginning, the Mega Charizard was the one that everyone wanted and went after. Now over time, the Mega Charizard, because there were so many of them, that really went down in value. And now people want the reprinted regular Holo Charizard because that one's so hard to get in a PSA 10. And that's where the chase is or where the value is now. So it's very interesting to kind of how that shifted over time. Now that's my experience of the set, having been in the market, having watched the market. Scott is sharing a specific data point here, which was really good to share, that like at the time he couldn't, unlike all the other sets, he couldn't get more of this set, at least originally. Now that dramatically changed because Pokemon printed so much of this that you could get this set for many, many, many years after. But there, I'm sure there was a window. I'm not sure how long that window was in the beginning where this set was very, very difficult to get and maybe even sold for quite a bit. That I don't know, like the highest price point this got to it sort of initially. But I do remember that Mega Charizard being about $200 again. That was a massive, massive amount of money for a card out of a modern set at that point in Pokemon history.
History of evolutions. It came out in a time when the hobby was much smaller. It was one of those sets that has like this gravitational pull to it, where there's people who went to Target and who can tell you for sure, like they're here 100% because of evolutions. Like they got back into the game because of evolutions. Like I can think of like 20 people off the top of my head from me 4 alone that came back into Pokemon because of evolution. So it's a fantastic set at the end of the day. And that's a good starting point for this discussion, is that it's definitely one of the best modern sets out there, bar none. I think it has a great mixture of old and the new, and they did a great job integrating like the old art with upgraded stats, giving them the power creep, except for Chansey. Chansey was so OP, they didn't have to change a thing. but I think they did a great job with that execution as well, all the way down to the cards and the selection. So what people
And so this part is subjective. It's Scott's opinion, and Scott, it's part opinion, part argument here. And I think the argument's a really good argument that Scott is making. And it's an argument that I agree with, by the way, that evolutions is, and I think the real strength of evolutions, as Scott says here and alludes to, and I think he maybe goes into a little bit more detail about this later on, is that it has a nice combination of old and new. It gives you that sort of nostalgia hit, and that's nostalgia connection of sort of those original base set reprint cards. And it gives you some of those new full art cards, full art things to chase. Plus, and I don't think he mentions this in this video, you also have that reverse holo slot where you can possibly get 2 hits per pack, right? 2, particularly at the prices when this video was out, 2 very expensive hits per pack. In fact, you could actually get 3 because, and Scott does mention this, if I remember correctly, you can also hit those secret rare cards that you're going to hit a few a box as well. So there's a lot of potential value or potential hits or potential excitement. I think it's a big reason, and I think the main reason why this set did really well is that all of that was also a really good sell for the online booster box breakers and for the online. And part of the reason I haven't, I think an unfair sort of negative bias against this set is I saw this transition happen where a lot of people who I knew really didn't like the set, very strongly disliked the set and didn't want to ever see the set and open so much and were tired of it, saw a good business opportunity with it because the newer people in the hobby were not tired of it. And there were so many potential hits and it was so fun to open for them and so fun to open across the entire set. And when you opened it as a booster box breaker, there were never packs where you got absolutely nothing because you always at least got some sort of like reverse holo of a base set card at the very least. And I think that to be blunt, I think that made it a comfortable set to charge a lot for. And it was sort of, you were kind of able to trick people, not intentionally, but there's this weird sort of trick that can happen of like, I don't realize how much money I'm actually losing by opening this set because at least I'm getting a little bit, even though I'm spending $20, $25, $30 a pack, which I was seeing some streamers. I saw $50 a pack in a few cases, really crazy amounts it got to. So it was kind of all of that kind of coalesced, but I definitely agree with Scott that really, particularly if you like I don't like reprinted sets that much. I'm not a big fan of celebrations for the same reason. There are a couple cards I wanted, but it's not fun opening a lot of that for me. Just that's very subjective. I'm not telling what anyone should want. Interestingly though, I will say that in other markets, the other markets tend to agree with me in the sense that when you look at reprinted comic book arts, reprinted cards in sports, reprinted arts in Yu-Gi-Oh! And all these other hobbies, they're always very, very inexpensive. Whereas, in Pokemon, reprinted arts have been very expensive and have been, selling very high. That doesn't mean that there are some differences there. One, these come in a booster box and a set, so it makes it more collectible. You can pull it, which brings more hype versus some of these other reprints from these other sets, which are promos, so they're not maybe as fun to chase. There's a lot of sophistication in that conversation and theories we can come up with why that is. But overall, my main point in that is just that there's a lot of subjectivity to what you like and what you don't like in this. And I can tell you that there's a lot of negative and probably overly harsh negative criticism of this set. And then in my opinion, a lot of kind of like overly positive, trying to explain why it was so high. That's just my perception.
Who don't care about emotional value or any of that. They're like, wait, EV is expected value, not emotional value. We'll get into that. We'll get into the numbers. So EV is typically its expected value or estimated value of the contents in the box versus the actual price of the box. Whenever you see that online, that's what it means. In the case of Evolutions has fantastic EV ratio, like phenomenal. So if we go down the line of some cards I wrote down over here, just from recent sales, like in the past week, we don't have to get into the holos. We don't have to get into
So before he goes into the sales, which are important, it did have very good EV at this time. It no longer does. And one thing, and you can go back to my videos around this time, one thing that I was trying to constantly argue is that the reason the single cards were so expensive and the expected value was so good, meaning the raw cards that you were pulling on average were so valuable, was one, because of what I talked about before, where there were so many different hits, there were so many different valuable cards in this set, including the secret rares, including the reverse hollows. I mean, we had some of those Pikachus selling for $100, $200 in PSA 10s, you know, that you could pull multiple in a box. Not to mention your super big hits that could make it $5,000 or something if you got in a PSA 10 like the Charizard. So at the time there was really high expected value, but as I was saying in the videos then, that was highly unlikely to hold because of how much of this stuff was printed, how much of that stuff was out there. I alone had like 50 Evolutions Charizards that I sent off to get graded around this time. And the reason no one had graded these before is because they just had very, very little value and nobody really wanted them for many, many years. And unfortunately, what Scott is saying here right now is it's not wrong. He's right that, and if you listen to this video in a very straightforward way, Scott is actually right about everything he's saying here. He's saying that, well, at $1,000 Evolutions boxes do make sense because the expected value is really high. And so it should be $1,000. But the real argument, or the better argument, which I was making on my channel, was that it's the biggest problem right now are the singles, because there's going to be so much of this being graded by everyone. There's going to be a rush to grade. And if you go onto the PSA website, if you check the sets that have been graded the most, Evolutions is right up there at the top with, you know, with Hidden Fates and with Base Set Unlimited and Base Set First Edition. All being, you know, over that $100,000 cards graded. Now, Evolutions had over 100,000 cards graded in 1 year. You know, some of those other sets, not in Fates, but the other ones took many years to grade that many, right? So there's a huge rush to grade these cards. Of course, when a lot of people start grading them, when a lot of people want to flip and make money, there's going to be a lot more supply. And PSA was shut down. PSA really still is fundamentally shut down for the lower value cards. And so there is so much Evolutions that's still coming back from PSA right now, that has been coming back over the last few months. And that's why we saw that Evolutions Charizard go from $1,200 in a PSA 9 all the way down to 90 or 100 or wherever it is now. It's a 90% drop. Okay. So unfortunately, Scott's argument here, certain people probably watched this and were like, oh, well, that means that I should probably invest in this booster box, that this booster box is going to, you know, continue to go up, or that this price really makes sense, instead of saying, yeah, the price makes sense versus the expected value, but the expected value is very dangerous here, because there's a very artificial market or moment that has formed with PSA shutting down that has caused, you know, these prices to go up so much. And Evolutions maybe being the most printed set ever, there is still so much of it out there that these prices are very, very unlikely to hold versus your first edition PSA, you know, WotC cards, you know, PSA 10, PSA 9, your set cards are you know, particularly trophy cards. And where Scott and I tend to always agree on, you know, Rarity being something that is highly dependable. This was a little bit of a strange video and strange take for me, and I think a number of people, because he seemed to abandon Rarity and kind of focus on his other principles in this. And I do think that was a big mistake. And you know, in this video, framing it this way. And although, as I said before, he was correct in this video in a sense, he didn't give the really useful information to people, which is that it's very likely gonna fall down. And I do have to say that Scott also said, maybe 8 months or so before he made this video, that if Evolutions ever got to $1,000, this is a statement he said, that we would officially be in a bubble, that we would be in a bubble. And funny enough, he actually correctly predicted that, or, you know, and he said it kind of offhanded jokingly, you know, because he was really at the time very anti all of the bubble talk and doesn't like when people say, you know, or at the time didn't like that people were saying that Pokemon was in a bubble, and called some of those people maybe a little foolish, you know, although it turns out that we were, you know, things dropped 90%, 70% within a month, you know, in some cases. But ironically, he called that right. The only issue is he then came out with a video like this at the height of it, kind of explaining why this price makes sense. And if someone didn't have kind of the knowledge that I had, they might have gone out and bought a lot of these cards thinking it was a very stable, good investment or good thing to buy or own.
So we're gonna start with base set Pikachu reverse hollow PSA 10, $350. Like if you have one hollow card, chase card, whatever that's doing $350 PSA 10 in a box that's priced at $1,000, that's already pretty solid. That's already good. But don't worry, Evolutions is just loaded. Pretty much all the full arts like Mewtwo, Pidgeot, go down the line, Brock, Misty, $200 plus in PSA 10 condition. Even like Blastoise, Charizard, especially, who has like over 3,000, like over 9,000 pop at this point. That is like $250 plus for PSA 10. You also have, of course, PSA 9 Charizard, like the basic Charizard reprint, $300 plus. And this is me being conservative. Like I'm saying plus because they go for more, but I'm doing the most conservative possible pricing for this stuff, and it's still a fantastic EV. A good way to illustrate like a terrible EV is like all the EX series. Like majority of the EX boxes are awful. Like I didn't even mention, like if you get the PSA 10 basic Charizard, definitely one of the hardest modern cards to grade out there for sure. But if you hit that thing, you're easily like 3 to 4 times the price you paid for the box out of that one card. Like easily, conservatively, that box or that card is hitting like 3K above at this point. So that would be like the top card in the set to get. So if we go something like Deoxys right now is being shopped around. There's a couple people with boxes that are trying to shop offers. People are throwing out like $50K right now, so $50,000 for an offer. So let's say a box sells $50,000, EX Deoxys. What do you got to do? What's your EV going to be to get that price back? You got to hit the Rayquaza, which isn't in every box. Gold Star is estimated in 1 in every other box. So if you got to hit Rayquaza out of those 3 that you might get, like Latios and Latias. So at the end of the day, you got to hit Rayquaza, which is really tough. It's got to be a PSA 10 just for you to recover, like just for you to get back in the game. Like we're not even talking about like making money yet, like just to get out of the red. It's a rough ride. And a lot of those boxes are like that. Dragon Frontiers is another one. A lot of the EX boxes have awful EV ratios. The contents of what you pull will be absolutely abysmal to the sealed price. And there's a lot of reasons why. There's a mixture of reasons. Part of that is the whole I was going to say Instagram and YouTube, like opening culture, whatever you want to call it, like people who are doing the pack sales, box breaks, things like that. That's a big motivator. Also, people who just collect sealed product, they want to open it. They want one of everything, whether it's a pack box or whatever. That's a whole nother motivator inside of that. So at the end of the day, it's something that's for Evolutions is a phenomenal EV. And for people, again, getting that emotion aside, like not the emotional value, like this is just math. Like it's not an issue of like, do you like Evolutions, dislike Evolutions? Like, do you think it's being flipped, scalped, whatever? None of that matters because like this is just simply math, and the EV is just data at the end of the day. It's not an emotional argument. And in this case, the data is clear that the card values, especially graded, just absolutely outweigh the box. Like even a bad box break is still going to get you like a break even if you grade decently well. Like you can even go the 9s.
And just to reiterate, right, just to make it very clear, like Scott is right in everything he's saying. But again, the conclusion I was making on my channel every single day was that just don't buy the individual set cards, that they're the worst cards in the hobby to buy right now. They're the things that are going to collapse the most. I was saying time and time again, first edition commons and uncommons, unlimited base set, and these. You can go back and watch my videos at that time, and those were all of the ones that collapsed 90, 80, 70%. And how did I know that was going to happen? Not because I'm some sort of genius. It's because I understand just basic supply and demand. And I knew how much supply was out there. I knew that the market was going to be flooded with these things. And I predicted that there just wouldn't be enough buyers for it, at least in the short term. Now, in the long term, there might be, and these prices might go back up and might do well. But your rarer items during this period were much, much better, safer, more stable buys because all the supply was not going to come back from PSA. And so even if prices didn't collapse quite as much as they did, they still would have collapsed more than these other items that I was promoting or talking about on my channel. And if the whole market had kept going up, similarly, these items still would have gone up less than the items I was talking about. And it's just simple supply and demand. So hopefully everyone can just like really learn, that lesson. And this is dangerous, right? It's dangerous how we use data to explain things, because if we say, well, all these cards are really expensive, so this booster box should go up in value. So I'm going to keep buying the booster box up and up and up. That makes logical sense. But another theory, right, is that the cards are way, way, way overvalued, right? And so the booster box is probably somewhat overvalued, but maybe not as overvalued as the cards. Exactly what I was saying on the channel. Also saying things like, if you're going to invest in modern during this period, do not invest in the singles, but invest in the sealed, because the sealed will come down less because a lot of it will be opened and because people pay a premium for the experience of opening. And so as you see, and Scott even illustrates this a second ago, those original Nintendo EX era boxes are very, very expensive, not because they have good expected value. The cards inside are worth way less than the box, but because the box is very rare. It's very rare to find one sealed. And because of the potential premium of opening, that someone very wealthy might want that one day for that experience of opening something they'd never opened theoretically. Or you can sell it to PokeRev or one of these box breakers, and they can make money on it by breaking it down and selling it to people and getting ad revenue and all sort. There are other ways to kind of make the money on that sealed product that you can't make on that final product, on that final card.
Some of those cards, you're still going to do fine. So again, it has as it stands, as I'm making this video, of course, things can change, but as I'm making this video, it has a fantastic EV, and that cannot be understated, especially when you go look at a lot of the other comparable boxes from the era. There's not really a set that is as mixed as this one. Also, something else, for people who hear me say that smpratism, one of the most famous ones, the older rare mint are better. This set has a little bit of that. It's kind of a asterisk next to that, because you have.
So when he said this, I was like, this should be good. Because I think one of my friends made a comment in the video, which was so funny, that said newer, I forget exactly what he said. He basically made a joke on that because Evolutions is the least rare set ever. It's very new, and it's, it is, I guess, hard to get very mint condition cards, but they're all 8s, 9s, and 10s, and there are millions, or hundreds of thousands of each of those in the world, and including the 10s. And one thing that people didn't understand is that because there are so many Evolutions Charizards, that regular holo, even though that regular holo is difficult to get in a PSA 10, there's only a 2% rate. Because of the amount that are going to be graded, you're still going to probably have 1,000 of them as PSA 10. Eventually, I mean, very, very far down, into the future. Whereas I highly doubt you'll ever get to that with some vintage sets on certain low pop PSA 10 cards, even though the low pop PSA 10 cards might be, you might get a higher percentage of 10s fresh out of pack on some of those. There just aren't that many packs like there are still Evolutions to open. Hopefully that makes sense for people.
Old art in the set, like big brain meme right now. You have the old Charizard, like Pikachu, Chansey, Machamp, Mewtwo. Like, you have a lot of that art in there. And I think they did a great job of like balancing the old with the new. Like I mentioned before with the text change, like Chansey is still a beast. They did a great job of balancing it out and making some of them playable. I remember at the time, Raticate was speculating to be really playable because it wasn't fully translated. But yeah, they really did a great job of adjusting that for the modern era while still giving you that nostalgia injection of the old art. So it does have that old art. So it technically qualifies in that regard. So older rare mints are better. And that's why it has so much demand. I think that's just a good mention, for people who really subscribe to the older rare mints are better mentality, because it's something where this one is kind of like a time travel set, which is why, probably why it did so well.
So I think he's skipping over his most important one, which is rarer here. Is it older because it's reprint? I think that is a decent argument, that it connects to that nostalgia, connects to that connection. Again, it didn't do that for me. I don't like reprints that much. And again, I've given lots of examples in other hobbies. I just bought the original 1940s Superman cards, a complete set for a lot of money, not too long ago. Whereas you can get a reprinted set of those complete, cards with the same art that are from 1980, which is still 40 years old, much older than any Pokemon card, and you can buy them for $20. So I'm paying $10,000 for the card, for the original cards, $20 for a whole set of the new ones. again, Pokemon can buck that trend, but I do have some historical data of why that may not always be the case, and why I think that, there's some risk and gamble in assuming that these cards, particularly and again, a year ago I said they're going to keep reprinting that base set Charizard. Here we are in celebrations. Again, you can go back in the videos and watch me say this time and time again. Theorizing these things. And as they continue to do that, will evolutions matter that much? Will it stand the test of time? And it absolutely could. You just have to understand that it's not a slam dunk. And the things that I think he's arguing as like very concretely 100% true are not slam dunk arguments. Let me put it that way.
Also, with the increase of base set, on that topic of older cards, with base set continually increasing, at least being consistently outpricing people. Like, for example, a full PSA 10 first edition base set just sold for $666,000. That's not a meme. That's what it actually sold for. I remember, we'll talk about 20th anniversary again. I remember when I started making videos, I don't even think the first edition base set, it was maybe flirting with 100K at the time. Like, I remember doing a call with my first Patreon members like ages ago. And they were like, hey, do you know anyone who'd pay 100K straight up, like cash? And at the time I didn't. I didn't know someone, at least who wanted to do it the way they wanted, who would throw down 100K cash, where today it's like you could get a whole like city full of people who'd be ready to throw down 100K cash for a PSA 10 first edition base set, because again, the last one sold for about 6 to 7 times the price of that. So that I think also plays a role. When base set increases, it's a classic rising tides lift all boats, brings up all the other base set stuff. I would even make a risky claim here, risky smpratte claim right now. I think evolution is actually better than base set 2. Like, that's a risky claim. But why I think that is because it really captures the old and the new, where base set 2 is just another reprint.
So I strongly disagree with this based on investability, and mainly that's just because of rarity. It's not because I think that base set 2 is so great. And I get Scott's argument that evolutions is combining the old and the new might even be a better, more enjoyable set than base set 2. There's just so much more evolutions printed, and it's in so much better quality that it's just not better as an investment, as a value, than base set 2. Now, it could be better as a collector, more fun as a collector, but I wouldn't expect the monetary return there. Now, his argument about all tides rise, as far as base set, then rising the price of all these sorts of things, that's absolutely true, right? But at the exact same time, I was also saying base set unlimited is very overvalued. So I think that evolutions is overvalued compared to unlimited, and I've gone into that, I think, enough on other videos. And then I think unlimited was very overvalued because that too, there was tons and tons of people grading it, and tons of supply coming out of the woodwork, and so many more booster boxes, unlimited booster boxes still sealed than people realized. And again, it just came from just being in the hobby a long time and knowing this sort of stuff, and just not trusting that endless sort of demand was going to be there to eat it all up, at least in the short term. Now, in the long term, I'm still very bullish, and we could return to some prices that we saw, a year ago. It just might take 5 years, might take 10 years. Some items may never go back up to where they were. We just don't know.
Fifth pressed olive oil, it's like just yet another reprint of base set, where evolutions is a nice mixture. I really like those full arts. I love the Brock full art, Misty full art. I love how they did like a mix of like bilingual executor, Surfing Pikachu. Imakuni's Doduo is like in English. Like, this is a nice selection. That is a really great execution. Where again, base set 2 is like, okay, more reprint. I hear people collected the Cosmo Hollow. I hear you typing right now. But at the end of the day, I would actually say that about, again, it's a risky claim. There's no way to prove it with data, but just from a collecting perspective, I see more people excited.
And again, there is no data when it's from a collecting perspective. So this is why it's a bit confusing just to a watcher. Is he arguing that evolutions is a better investment than base set, and the evolutions booster box should be more than base set 2? Because then the data should matter. And, I think clearly here, the base set 2 box is, I would be very surprised if evolution surpasses base set 2 box one day. And if it does, anything is possible again, but you're going to need so much more demand because of that rarity. And then from a collector perspective, people are free to collect and enjoy whatever they want. If someone comes to me and says, I prefer evolutions to base set 2 because of the reasons Scott's saying here, I would say that makes perfect sense to me. Enjoy what you want to enjoy. But if you're coming out and making a video and telling other people like what to invest in, or imply, like a lot of channels did this year, like top 5 things to invest in, and you don't explain rarity and the importance of rarity as in terms of supply and demand. Supply is half the battle here. You are doing your audience a disservice and you're not informing them of the risks.
Solutions. And that's one other thing I want to mention here towards the end. This set had so many people chasing it. Like, so many people wanted to complete this set. I don't know how long this video is, but we can go for an hour if really. There's so many things that come by with Evolutions, but so many people were chasing this set right when it came out, and still to this day. Like, it's a very fun set to complete. It looks so nice getting all the full arts. It looks so nice getting like the base set stuff in there. It works so well together. And again, if you don't care about the emotional value, the amount of people who were trying to chase Evolutions was by far greater than any set. I would safely say definitely the most collected modern set out there. You know, you can throw Hidden Fates, you can throw Shiny Fates or Shiny V or whatever at me, but the difference with this is like people were trying to get card per card, you know, like full set.
Again, I feel like maybe it's the most collected set of all time. I mean, part of why it might be the most collected set is because they printed so much of it. There's so much out there, and people have already been collecting it for years, other than like Hidden Fates or Shining Fates. It's not a huge point. It just feels very like a little bit like, you know, this is the best set of all time. This is the most popular set. People love this set the most. And I think if you really ask around for people, there's going to be a lot of people who really don't like Evolutions. And I personally think Hidden Fates is a set that more people really like to collect and more people universally have a positive opinion on because it was new, because it was all shiny cards, et cetera, et cetera. But again, it's very subjective. And so neither one of us knows what is the most popular set in terms of people actually liking it or not liking it. Clearly, all of these sets are very popular. Lots and lots of people like them.
Master sets, like the super experts out there are trying to get the double colorless variants, all that stuff. You know, it really had a strong core of people really trying to get all those cards and collect that set because it's just fun to do. And of course, like I said, with Hidden Fates and all that, definitely close contenders. But I would safely say Evolutions is definitely the set most people collect because it does a perfect job of bridging old and new. So one more thing I wanted to say in closing is that for people who still don't agree or don't think it makes sense to them, consider that the Japanese CP6 has been well above $1,000 for a while. And of course, it's a smaller print, but also it has smaller demand. Like, there's no way around it. I love Japan. This is a Japanese franchise. I always try to like talk about, you know, a lot of the Japanese promos that fly under the radar. But at the end of the day, without a doubt, the English set market is like its wheelhouse, where it's Achilles' heel is promos. Like, Delivery Pikachu is like the first promo they did in like a decade. It's exclusive. So that's the makeup. Where Japan's a little bit different. Japan's definitely got a big arena of promos and a growing amount of set interest as well. But at the end of the day, there is so much demand for this. And that idiom that I'm always saying, flipping is a symptom of demand. You know, people who think like, oh, this is just because of flippers, scalpers, whatever new buzzwords being used. Tell me why Crimson Invasion is like a ninth of the price. You know, why is Crimson Invasion not $1,000? Why is the EV of Crimson Invasion, more importantly, not $1,000? The EV is really the crucial point there because people get lost in the flippage and they don't really dig deeper beyond that. They don't actually open up the box, literally and figuratively, and really get into the details of like who's buying this stuff, who's collecting this stuff. And with Evolutions, it becomes apparent when you look at the cards. People actually love this stuff. People actually love this set. No one's talking about Crimson Invasion. If anything, Crimson Invasion is always going to be that like terrible set that you're always going to talk about. Not like Emerging Powers terrible, but pretty close. And that's why that box is like a little bit over 100, you know, after 4 years, where this one is like flirting with 1,000 after 4 years. And also this one has probably 9 times as much product out there, and it still is hitting that price point. You know, just like Base Unlimited. Why Base Unlimited has such a high pop, so many boxes, packs, whatever, always for sale, is because there's that many people who want it, you know, and that's what you got to do.
At the end of the day, this is really a demand argument that Scott is making and is saying that Evolutions is the most popular set. It will, you know, continue to be the most popular set or one of the most popular sets. And despite the huge amount of supply, that is why it makes sense for it to be $1,000 at this point. And I don't know if he doesn't really say that he thinks it's going to keep going up or anything like that, but the overall tone of this video is like very positive. Like, it should be this price. It's a stable item and it should continue going up. There's really no counter argument to that other than to say that you're basically betting on the demand side against the supply side. And as I've explained on this channel, and I've showed so many examples, demand can shift very quickly. Even in evolutions, the demand between what card people wanted the most shifted over time. As Pokemon prints more and more reprints of these sets, and maybe even complete reprints, and what if they print a gold reprint or a shiny reprint base set? We have no idea. Or a serialized reprint base set. It is a lot of risk investing in the set because people do not, in my opinion, care that much about this set. A lot of it to me is hype and money and the excitement of it, and people love base set. But if there are more and more base set options and even cooler serialized or gold card or shiny card base set options in the future, I don't know what's going to happen to this. Now, I'm not saying that it won't go up. Okay. I just want people to understand the risk and all of that, because when you bet on demand and when you invest in demand going up or increasing for something, you're dealing with a lot of subjectivity. Okay. And so that's my most biased take, unbiased take I can possibly have. I clearly have my bias on this. I do not think I think the majority of newer people in this hobby, and even probably older people in this hobby, maybe like evolutions more than me. But hopefully people can understand the arguments and also understand how I was able to predict correctly the humongous decrease in the prices of the singles of these. Now I'll let Scott finish, and then we'll kind of wrap it up here and make the last point, which is what are the booster box prices doing today versus what are the ungraded cards doing today?
Really dig into, because I think a lot of people who disregard what's going on with evolutions or throw the baby out the bathwater, they get caught up in the flippage of the boxes and they don't get in there into the actual cards, and they don't realize like this is all related. Demand is the only reason why you can flip stuff. Like I can't go to the store and flip like the no-name toys in the majority of the Target aisles. I can't go do that. I can, if I try to like Nickelodeon, like Toys R Us 90s, like shopping spree and knock everything in my cart, come home and put up on eBay, majority of it's not going to sell because majority of it's not popular. Where this is, when there's exorbitant demand, that inherent reality of physics is true in markets. Like when you have exorbitant growth, so does the shadow, like the scalper, Team Rocket flipper, that grows as well. But never forget, it's because that's the only way that shadow can exist. Without it, it'd be like Crimson Invasion. No one's trying to mess with that stuff. And if Crimson Invasion were like thousands of dollars for boxes, yeah, I think that would be an irregularity. The market would have to be so huge at that point. It would look odd right now. But yeah, with evolutions, the prices, especially in relation to the EV and all the other things I mentioned about the emotional value as well and the history of the set.
So I'll end it right there. There's a little bit left of the video, but yeah, it basically, he's just making that demand argument. And again, it's just hard to predict something like that. And we will see where that goes in the future. As far as the booster box prices, the booster box prices have not come down nearly as much as the singles prices. The booster boxes have been pretty steady around $600 to $800 from what I'm seeing today, down from that $1,000. And that just goes to show you that sealed product behaves differently than the singles and the expected value. And I'm not going to get into a whole conversation. We've talked a lot about it on this channel, but it's a much more complicated equation of how much has been opened, how much is left, and then how much money can people still make off those boxes by opening them up on channels, by giving people those experiences. I think that is really keeping those prices high and driving those prices high. I truly believe if there were not these booster box breakers and online things, and I could be wrong about this, but I truly believe that if those did not exist and people were not still buying these packs for $20, $25 every night, that these boxes would be, back down to $300. Again, that's probably silly for me to say and kind of throwing numbers out there, but and I probably shouldn't do that. But the point hopefully is there, that there are clearly these sort of aspects of the market that hold up those booster box prices a lot more than the singles themselves. Okay. So thank you all so much for watching this video. Please, support me on Patreon. I do exactly what Scott does on Patreon, which is, and again, I owe Scott a lot for inspiring me to do this, right? We do monthly Zoom conversations where I actually bring people on a Zoom call, and we're up to about 250 members, and we all have conversations about the hobby, about the market. Subscribe to the channel, support the channel. And at the end of the day, I hope that this is a constructive, positive thing, and that it's okay for people to have these difficult discussions. It's actually allows the community to not be toxic, and not everyone's right all the time. Okay. And we don't need to pedestal anyone. You don't need to pedestal Scott. You don't need to pedestal me. You don't need to pedestal anyone. You can still appreciate someone, the body of work, the importance of the hobby, and disagree with some of the points they're making in a smart way. Okay. Thank you all for watching. And I will have another video for you guys in the future. All right. Thank you.